The following content depicts found footage, audio recordings, and assembled files. The events, locations, and individuals depicted are fictional to ensure anonymity. Viewer discretion is advised. Share your experiences and reactions in the comments. They may be used in future studies of unexplained phenomena.
I never worked in an enclosed place again after vibrating. Too dark, too silent. But sometimes, inside elevators or underground parking lots, I still hear the knocking on the walls, soft at first, then closer, as if something followed me out of those tunnels and still wants me back down there with it. I started at Byberry in the summer of 1964. The hospital loomed like a gray fortress, its windows sealed, its hallways echoing with that old institutional hum, the kind that made silence sound alive. My shift began at midnight. The veterans called it the quiet hours. During orientation, one of the older guards pulled me aside. "Whatever you do," he said, lowering his voice, "avoid the tunnels." I thought it was a joke, some kind of rookie hazing. The others laughed when I asked what was down there. "Nothing," they said. "That's the problem." That night, I walked my rounds through the East Wing. Every few minutes, I heard faint metallic creaks from below the floor. I told myself it was pipes expanding, old ducts shifting. But at 2:17 a.m., I heard it clearly. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. It came from beneath my feet. The motion alarms in the sublevel started going off that same week. Always around the same time, -2 to 3 a.m. each time I checked the monitor. The red light blinked near Tunnel 3, where no one was supposed to go anymore. My supervisor, Green, ordered me to sweep the area anyway. "You're new," he said. "You'll learn not to spook easy." I took a flashlight and went down the stairwell. The air grew thick, heavy with mildew. Pipes lined the ceiling like ribs. The light caught dust swirling through the air, dust that looked disturbed. The alarm panel kept blinking somewhere deeper inside, but there was no movement, no patience, no sound except the slow drip of water onto concrete. Then, just before I turned back, I heard it again. Faint, from somewhere down the left tunnel. Knock. Knock. It was slower this time, as if it knew I was listening. A week later, I was patrolling the West Wing when I saw something at the far end of the corridor. A figure. Thin. Still, just standing there. The hallway lights flickered, but it didn't move. It was too tall to be a patient, too quiet to be a staff member. "Hello." My voice sounded small in that long hallway. No answer. I stepped closer. The shape didn't shift or breathe. Then, as I reached halfway, the fluorescent lights went out all at once. When they flickered back, the corridor was empty. But the access door to the lower stairwell stood open. I approached slowly. The air from below was cold, wet, and smelled of rust. On the door frame, scratched into the paint, were 3 small marks. Vertical lines. Fresh. They looked like fingernails had carved them. It was a stormy night when I found the old security office. The door had been sealed with a wooden board, but part of it was already split. Inside, everything was coated in dust. Files scattered across the floor. Drawers ripped open. The air smelled of rust and paper rot. I started reading the reports. Most were routine transfer logs, maintenance records, until I reached a folder marked TT Restricted. Inside were forms signed off by hospital staff, but every patient name was blacked out. Each entry ended with the same phrase: returned via tunnel transfer. Yet there were no corresponding check-ins afterward. At the bottom of one page, a note was handwritten in the margin. Small, shaky letters. "Silence is compliance." I looked up. The door had swung almost shut. The hallway outside was empty, but somewhere beneath the floor, faint and steady, came the knocking again. I waited until my next night off. I couldn't stop thinking about the files, or about what might still be under there. I told myself I'd just take a quick look, just to prove it was nothing. The entrance was behind the boiler room, sealed by a rusted gate. I forced it open. The air hit me like a wall. Wet, stale, heavy. My flashlight beam barely cut through the dark. The tunnel stretched on forever. The concrete was damp, marked by long scratches. Some were fresh. My boots echoed with every step. And then, another set of footsteps echoed back. They stopped when I stopped, started again when I moved. I turned my light toward the sound. Nothing. Just pipes. Steam. Dripping water. Then came that sound, the one that haunted every shift since I started. Knock. Knock. I don't know how far I walked. The air grew colder, thinner. Every turn looked the same. I followed faint footprints in the dust, barefoot prints, leading deeper into the dark. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber. My light caught movement, shapes drifting between the columns, pale, thin, almost transparent. People, or what was left of them. Their eyes reflected the light, but their faces were blank. Their mouths opened and closed, but no sound came out. They only watched me. One figure stood closer than the rest, a woman in a torn gown. Her jaw trembled, but no voice followed. When I whispered, "What happened to you?" she raised a shaking hand and pointed down another passage. On the wall behind her, scratched deep into the concrete, were 4 words. "We stayed too long." The further I went, the quieter it became. Even the drip of water had stopped. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then steadied again. I reached a heavy iron door at the end of the passage. Someone had painted over the words, but the number was still visible underneath. 9. The door was rusted shut. I pushed until the hinges screamed and finally gave way. Inside was a chamber square, low and suffocating. Rusted restraints bolted to the walls. Torn hospital gowns scattered across the floor. The smell was unbearable, thick with iron and decay. On the far wall, something was written in dark, flaking streaks. 4 words. "We were left here." Underneath, smaller letters, almost carved into the concrete. "To be quiet." I backed away, heart pounding. My light shook as I turned. The corridor outside was full dozens of 10 hollow faces, wet eyes, catching the light, watching, waiting. They didn't move at first. They only stared, heads tilting slightly as if they were trying to remember what sound felt like. Then, one of them took a step forward. Another followed. Their feet dragged softly against the concrete. Not a single sound came from their mouths. I ran. The tunnels twisted endlessly, every turn the same. My flashlight hit walls, covered in handprints, scratches, words half erased by time. The air grew thick, the knocking echoing from everywhere at once. When I looked back, there were closer, dozens now, maybe more. Their faces glowed pale in the dark. They didn't chase, they only advanced, slow and certain, filling the corridor behind me. I saw a red light ahead, an alarm beacon still blinking near a maintenance elevator. I sprinted, lungs burning. The elevator doors opened just as I reached them. I threw myself inside and slammed the control. As the doors closed, fists began hitting the metal. Hard, then softer, then just one. Steady knock. I quit that morning. Turned in my badge, left my uniform on the chair, and walked out before sunrise. I didn't look back. They shut down Baberi years later. Said it was for safety reasons, structural issues, budget cuts. But I know what's still under there. I hear it sometimes. In basements and parking garages, in elevator shafts, when I'm alone. The sound starts faint, just a tap, like something brushing the inside of the wall. Then comes the pattern. 3 knocks. Always 3. I tell myself it's pipes. Old plumbing echoes from somewhere else. But when I stand close enough. Primera cae nel filo italiano. Something on the other side. Waiting. still trying to speak. I was already retired when the phone rang for the last time. No caller ID, no name, just a faint breath on the line. And then, the same whisper that haunted me for decades. She asked, still in Ward C. I hung up immediately. Danvers had been demolished years ago, yet some nights, I still smell hospital alcohol in my hallway, and I still see that steel door sliding open on its own. It was my first month on the night shift at Danvers State Hospital. They called it the graveyard shift for a reason. The halls were endless, tiled floors echoing every step. The air heavy with bleach and something older, something damp. I was 24, new to the job, desperate to prove myself. By 2 a.m., the ward was silent, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. I checked vitals, logged medications, tried to ignore the way my own reflection looked in the dark windows. Pale, twitchy, exhausted. The older nurses joked that Ward C was haunted. "Don't go near it," one said, lighting a cigarette outside the break room. "She doesn't like new blood." I laughed, pretending it didn't get to me. But when I passed the corridor leading to Ward C that night, I swear I heard a faint hum. A woman's voice, humming through metal. It stopped the second I turned my head. It was 3 nights later when the intercom came alive. I was charting in the nurse's station when the static hissed from the old wall speaker. Every unit had been rewired years ago, except Ward C, which was completely disconnected. The fire had destroyed that section in the 1950s. The static grew clearer, shaping itself into words. A woman's voice. Calm, steady, medication for patient 326. I froze. There was no patient 326. The hospital used 4-digit identifiers now. I pressed the talk button, my voice trembling. "Who is this? What ward are you calling from?" Silence. Then a faint breath, just before the line went dead. The sound stayed in my head all night. That soft exhale, like someone standing inches from the receiver. I checked every record I could find before morning. Ward C had no active files, but one entry from 1953 caught my ID: patient 326. Female, acute paranoia, following abandonment trauma. Status: deceased. Chapter 3, the medication log. The following week, I found it on my cut, a single clipboard sheet, yellowed and cracked at the edges. It wasn't from our current log system. The handwriting was neat, careful. At the top, the date, October 21st, 1953. At the bottom, the nurse's signature, M. Halpern. I knew that name. She'd died in the Ward C fire. My hands shook as I read the middle section. Medication administered. Morphine. 10 milligramos, patient 326. I walked the halls looking for anyone playing a prank, but the night shift was thin, 2 orderlies asleep, 1 nurse all rounds. The clipboard vanished before dawn. No one claimed to have seen it. I tried convincing myself it was fatigue, stress, something explainable. But when I looked at my hands that morning, faint soot marks stained my fingertips like I'd handled something burned. I'll never forget that metallic sound. It was around 3 a.m., the hour when the whole hospital seemed to hold its breath. I was finishing rounds when a loud clang echoed through the lower corridor. The noise came from the east wing, the direction of Ward C. The door had always been welded shut, sealed years before I even started working there. But that night, it stood open. Not broken, just open, as if someone had quietly unlatched it from the inside. The stench hit me first. Smoke and rust. My flashlight trembled as I stepped inside. The walls were blackened, the ceiling blistered. Burn marks still carved the story of the old fire. And yet, in the center of the ward, I heard breathing. Slow, rhythmic, close. When I called for security, my voice echoed like it was swallowed by the dark. They arrived minutes later, and the door was sealed again. Perfectly welded, untouched. The supervisor scolded me for false reporting. But I know what I saw. I can still hear the sound of that breath following me out. I went digging through the old archives. Boxers stacked in the basement. coated in dust and the faint smell of mold. That is where I found the tape. A reel to reel labeled only with the words, Ward C, Evaluation 326. Curiosity outweighed fear. I threaded it through the player and pressed play. A man's voice, likely a doctor, began calmly interviewing a patient. Her responses were barely audible, whispers caught between static. When she finally spoke clearly, my stomach turned. She said she didn't want to be left alone again, that the nurses had promised they'd come back. Then she began to cry, soft, then loud, then screaming until it distorted the tape, and right before the end, she shouted a phrase that made the reel snap under tension. Don't leave me again. I sat there frozen, the machine still spinning. I could swear, underneath the hiss of the tape, I heard breathing, not recorded, but real, behind me. After that night, nothing was normal again. The call lights began to flicker at random. Only in rooms without patients, wheelchairs rolled on their own down empty halls. The temperature dropped near Ward C. Even though the vents were closed, Nurse Delaney quit after hearing a whisper through her stethoscope. She said it called her by name. I didn't believe her until it happened to me. I was checking vitals when a faint voice rose from the earpiece, so close it made me drop the instrument. She said my name, slowly, like she was tasting it. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that burned hallway, that steel door half open. I started avoiding the East Wing entirely. But the voice didn't care where I went. It followed me, in the hum of the lights, in the static of the intercom, in the silence between heartbeats. She wasn't waiting in Ward C anymore. She was calling for me. It was the night I finally broke. The whispering wouldn't stop. It followed me from the hallway to the locker room, from the stairwell to the nurse's station. When the intercom clicked on again, the voice didn't ask for medication. It sighed my name and then, softly, come see me. I checked the clock. Las 3:17 a.m. The corridor toward C felt colder than any place I'd ever been. My flashlight flickered, the beam barely cutting through the dark. When I reached the welded door, it was open again. Waiting. Inside, the air shimmered with heat and ash, though no fire burned. In the center of the burned ward sat a woman on a charred bed, her hair matted, her gown scorched but intact. She didn't move until I whispered, "Patient 326. She turned slowly toward me. Her eyes were wide, empty, yet filled with something desperate. You came back, she said. Her voice was gentle, like relief wrapped in grief. Don't leave me again. Behind her, shadows rippled across the walls, bars of light flickering like fire. I stepped closer. She reached for me, and everything went dark. I woke up in the infirmary, drenched in sweat. The supervisor said I'd collapsed during rounds, that I'd been found near the East Wing. No mention of the door, or the woman, or the smell of smoke still clinging to my scrubs. They wrote it off as exhaustion, stress, lack of sleep. I didn't argue. My badge was suspended, and they put me on forced leave. Within a month, the hospital began shutting down units. Danvers was closing for good. But the nights didn't quiet. Every time I turned off the light, I heard her voice. First in my dreams, then behind me in the dark. I unplugged every phone in the house. I stopped answering the door. Nothing helped. One evening, as I was packing the last of my uniforms away, the faint smell of antiseptic filled the room. A whisper brushed against my ear. I waited. Years passed. Danvers was demolished. The grounds paved over for housing. I told myself it was over, that she was buried with the concrete and the ashes. Then came the call. No number. No voice at first, just breathing. Familiar. Patient. I almost hung up, but then I heard her the same tone, the same quiet plea from decades ago. She's still in ward. See, I froze. My hands shook as I looked toward the hallway. The smell hit me again. Alcohol wipes, burnt linen, and at the end of the corridor, in the half-dark, saw it. A steel door sliding open by itself. They tore the hospital down. But somehow, Ward C followed me. And every night, when the phone rings, I know she's still there, waiting for me to come back. I thought time would erase everything. But yesterday, when I went to visit my brother in the hospital, I saw the number on the door. 17, my legs froze it. 70 years have passed, yet I still heard that same voice behind me. Soft, raspy, and patient. Lay down. It only hurts the first day. When I first saw Waverly Hills, it looked more like a fortress than a hospital. The building sat above the city, swallowed by mist, its windows glowing weakly in the distance. I had just turned 21, too young to know what real sickness looked like. They hired me as a night orderly to clean rooms, change linens, keep watch. The first thing I noticed was the smell, not just disinfectant, but decay, like damp wood and blood. The wards were packed, every bed filled. People coughed until they couldn't breathe anymore, and when they finally stopped, someone else took their place. During orientation, one of the nurses whispered to me, "Don't ever open room 17 after midnight." She smiled afterward, like it was a joke. But later that night, when I passed the east corridor, I saw a black number painted on a white door, 17, and for some reason, the handle looked warm. Nights were endless. The air vibrated with coughing dry, wet, choking. Some patients prayed, others screamed. The sound followed me everywhere, even when I was alone. One night, while collecting used linens, I noticed a bed near the window moving slightly. The blanket rose and fell, but the patient had died 2 hours earlier. I froze, watching it deflate slowly, like someone had just stopped breathing beneath it. Another time, I saw a figure standing at the end of the hall, thin, pale, hospital gown, fluttering. When I blinked, it was gone. The only thing left was a faint smell of antiseptic and rust. Later, I was changing bandages for a man named Arthur. He grabbed my wrist and hissed, "Don't send me to 17. His nails dug into my skin, his eyes wide, glassy. They take you apart in there. I laughed it off, but after that, every time the intercom buzzed, I felt my chest tighten, because I knew, eventually, someone would say that number. The next night, the head nurse handed me a clipboard. "Transfer from West Ward," she said. I scanned the form. Female, 24. Evelyn M. Ward, room 17. When I reached her bed, she was awake, sitting upright. Her eyes were tired but alert. "Please," she whispered, clutching her blanket. "Not that room. I'll stay anywhere else." Primera. Esitate. The hallway to 17 felt colder, longer than usual. I thought about asking the nurse to change her assignment, but my supervisor's voice echoed in my head. Orders are orders. When I opened the door, the air shifted. It was heavier, like the room had been sealed for years. Evelyn stepped inside, trembling. I tried to smile, to reassure her, but the words caught in my throat. As I turned to leave, she said quietly, "You'll see them too." I didn't ask who she meant, but when I closed the door, I swear I heard another voice inside, whispering, right next to hers. I started noticing things about room 17 that didn't make sense. The temperature dropped near the door. The paint bubbled and cracked, revealing pale stains underneath like handprints pressed from the inside. When I leaned close, I could hear something faint. Breathing. Slow and steady. That night, the intercom hissed to life. Static filled the ward, followed by a voice that wasn't anyone on staff. "She's not alone," it said. Just that. Then silence. I went to check on Evelyn. The moment I turned to the handle, the door side, a deep exhale, warm, wet air brushing my face. Inside, she sat upright, staring at the wall. "Do you hear it too?" she asked softly. Before I could answer, the light flickered. For half a second, I saw someone standing behind her. A shape, tall and motionless, head bent toward her shoulder. When the light steadied, it was gone. Evelyn didn't move. It's waiting, she whispered. It knows you now. Morning never felt real in that place. I'd finished my shift, but the light outside seemed to pale the trust. That day, they sent me down the supply tunnel, the same one they used to transport bodies. The smell hit first, disinfectant mixed with something sweet and rotten. The deeper I went, the more I felt watched. My footsteps echoed. But there was another rhythm beneath them. Bare feet. Dragging slightly. Halfway down, my lantern flickered. Shadows moved along the walls, slow, synchronized, like a procession. Men and women in gowns, heads bowed. They passed without sound, walking uphill, toward the main ward. I dropped the lantern. The flames snuffed out, leaving only my breath and theirs. Primera narrator, dozens of slow, rattling inhales, all moving in the same direction, toward room 17. I went back that night, even though every part of me screamed not to. The hallway leading to room 17 looked different, longer. The lights dimmed one by one behind me, as if sealing me in. When I opened the door, my chest tightened. The bed was surrounded. Shapes stood around it, dozens of pale, expressionless, faces hollow like paper. Their mouths opened and closed, soundlessly. Evelyn lay motionless in the center. Her skin was almost translucent. I reached for a wrist, searching for a pulse. The instant my fingers touched her, her eyes shot open. "They never left," she whispered. Every figure turned toward me at once. The air grew heavy, thick with breath that wasn't mine. The door slammed shut behind me, and in the darkness, the sound returned. That slow, patient breathing, circling closer, until I could feel it against my ear. I couldn't breathe. The air inside room 17 was thicker than before, heavy, full of whispers that didn't belong to anyone alive. The walls seemed to move, stretching and pulsing like lungs. Every breath I took felt stolen. Evelyn sat upright, staring past me. "They stay because their room remembers," she said. Her voice sounded different, layered, like more than one person was speaking through her. I turned toward the door, but the handle twisted on its own. The floor rippled beneath my feet. When I ran, the hallway stretched endlessly, bending back on itself until I stood again before the same number, -17. The lights flickered. I looked down the corridor and saw myself. Another version of me, pale, eyes wide, holding the same clipboard, taking the same step forward. The door opened for him, for me, and I realized it had never stopped. It keeps us, all of us, the moment I entered again. The room felt new, like it was starting over. The sheets were clean, the smell of disinfectant sharp. Evelyn lay there, smiling faintly, just as she did the first time. I looked at my hands, younger, unscarred, my uniform crisp, freshly pressed. I heard my own voice say, "Miss, I'll help you settle in." And then I understood. I was reliving the same night, trapped in its first breath. The walls inhaled softly. The light dimmed. Evelyn's eyes met mine. "It only hurts the first day," she whispered. My lungs tightened. The air disappeared. I reached for the door, but it closed slowly. From the inside, the nurse called my name twice before I answered. I had drifted again, staring at the hospital door in front of me. Room 17. My brother was inside, recovering from surgery, but when I stepped closer, the hallway lights dimmed. Who slightly enough to make my heart stutter. A faint hiss came from the intercom. Static first, then that same slow exhale. "Lay down." The nurse didn't seem to hear it. She smiled politely, waiting for me to enter. My knees trembled. Primera turned away, forcing myself to walk. But just before the elevator doors closed, I heard it again. That rasping breath, patient and close to my ear. "It only hurts the first day,"